Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Vintage Motocross Q&A. I'm your host, Joe Abadi. Thank you, Jordan, once again for putting a show together for us, for Chelsea, for Susie, for everyone involved who helps us put a show together every Wednesday for you. We've got an exciting show lined up for you, so let's get down to the starting line. I'm going to tell you a bit more about it. In the show tonight, in the Next Time Try This segment, I've put together a really great video for you. Jordan did some wonderful editing. We're going to tell you a little bit more about how to polish lower fork legs a little bit later on in the show. In the Moto Showcase, we take a look at an AJS 250, a very special bike with some sentimental value. I'm looking forward to bringing that to you as well. In the Here's the Problem segment, we cover a variety of topics tonight, from how to install main bearings onto a crank and into cases. We have a question coming in about some of the corrosion that's involved in some of the magnesium cases for the Hondas, and a couple of other things as well. We'll get to them in a little while. What's it worth? We got to look at a 1981 Yamaha YZ250. This was a bike that we found on our Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide page this week on Facebook. I'll tell you a bit more about that and how much it sold for. In the Just How I See It segment, we're going to be talking about hand cleaner or hand sanitizer and a couple of other things that are on my mind. You're not going to want to miss that. Trivia is back. First Wednesday of the month, we give away that great book that's been given to us by Keith Geisner, Finding Number 49, all about that mysterious Harley-Davidson motocross bike that was discovered. So a little bit later on in the show, I'm going to give you a trivia. You're going to call in to the number. Somebody's going to win a book tonight. Right now, what I'd like you to do is look down at your phone, or if you're on your computer, and share the show. Tell some friends about it. Invite them over. Let them enjoy some of the things that we bring to you this week and every week on Vintage Motocross Q&A. Please share it. YouTube, it's growing slow, but it's growing. We're almost at, I think it's about 300 subscribers right now. So it's growing, but we need some more help there. When you get a minute after the show tonight, go over and please subscribe to the Vintage Motocross Q&A YouTube channel. That'll give you the ability to see all the videos we've ever made here on the show in HD, and you'll be able to watch them from your big screen TV. So please subscribe to our channel on YouTube. As always, I want to thank all of our sponsors who have stuck with us throughout the show: Preston Petty Products, Vmxq&A, Amsoil, Metro Racing, and of course, FastGuysStuff.com. Thank you all for all the help you give us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. In our Next Time Try This segment, tonight I want to talk to you a little about refinishing lower fork legs. One of the things a lot of people are raving about today is wet honing or vapor blasting. It's a great way to get aluminum clean. It works especially great on small things like carburetors or things that might be rough sand cast or just rough cast aluminum, such as a rear hub. But on something smooth like a fork leg, the vapor honing, yes, it's going to get the aluminum nice and clean like you see it here. It's going to remove any clear coat that you have on there. But it's not the answer to getting out nicks and scrapes. That's going to take a little work on your part, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more how to do that. I'm going to show you on the lathe how we do it here. After I get done, I'll come back and I'll show you how you can do it at home with just some sandpaper and a little patience. Before I begin at the lathe, I'm going to be removing these studs. We take them out with a little tool like this. Fits right over, it locks on, takes the studs out without any damage. So let's get over to the lathe. I'll show you how I do it there, and when we come back, I'll show you how to do it at home. Now, what I've used here was 3 different grades of sandpaper. I start off with 180, I go to 240, then I go to 320. What I would recommend strongly is that you use emery cloth. Emery cloth you can get in a plumbing supply store. You can get it in different grits, and it runs a little cooler in your hand as you're using it on a lathe, if you're going to do it in a lathe, just like this. When that thing is turning, paper can get a little warm sometime. With emery cloth, you'll be much better off. As you can see, I hold the paper nice and straight across the workpiece. This way my lines come out nice and clean when I go around. The only problem that, of course, I do have is toward the end of the fork leg where the brake lug is. Okay, so you saw how we did it on the lathe. You put the piece in the lathe, you chuck it up, you've got a live center on the other side. The lathe spins the workpiece and you hold your sandpaper against it, and everything comes out pretty nicely. The only problem that you have is, of course, in an area like this where you have the lug for the front brake, you're not going to be able to spin it on the lathe and get any results right there. So I'm going to show you a little bit how to handle that area right now. After we do that, we're going to take the other leg and I'll show you how to refinish the majority of it and get the same results that we got on the lathe. What I've done here is secure it in my vise. I fold up a small piece of sandpaper and I start off the same way I did originally, 180, 240, 320, and I make sure I get into all those cracks and crevices around where that brake lug is, and I sand the same direction as I was going when I had it in the lathe. I follow up with some Scotch-Brite pad, just the way you see it here, and in the end, it all matches up to the rest of the work I've done that I had on the lathe. If I have marks like this, what I like to do is to take a fine file, a little three-face file like this, and I gently file across those scrapes. Gently though, I don't want to cause a flat spot on the lower fork leg. I go over it till it looks like most of it's out, then I'll follow up with a little sandpaper. I'll start again probably at 240 right here. I'll keep the paper flat in my hand and I'll go over with the contour of the fork leg. If I see a little scratch or a little nick, I'll go the opposite way, then follow up to go with the grain again. In the final process, I'll fold up a piece of 240 and I'll run it across that fork leg like you see here, like you're shining a pair of shoes if you remember the days when you used to do that. If there are any small imperfections, I follow up. You can do the same. If you're going a different direction, it's not a big deal as long as you follow up the way I'm doing it right here. After that, again, I follow up with the Scotch-Brite pad. I go from top to bottom, over the top, down to the bottom, and I get a super clean, shiny finish. Well, not so shiny. I get a nice brush finish, a nice satin finish on that lower fork leg. And that question was posed to us a couple of weeks ago. I wanted to do a video on it. I want to thank Jordan for editing it, doing such a great job. And you can get the same results at home. You don't have to have a metal lathe in order to do this. If you just follow the things I showed you how to do here, you'll get the same results I get. After that, by the way, if you wanted to follow up with some clear coat and paint, or you could have them clear powder coated, you can do that as well. Or keep them just like that. You can freshen them up whenever you need them. What's up next, Jordan? Oh, the Moto Showcase. 1971 AJS 250 Stormer that was sent in to us by Sean McDonald. Sean sent in some bikes before, but this one is really kind of special. Sean explains to us here that this 71 Stormer was bought at a local vintage MX race for $240. His tie to the bike is that his cousin Steve McDonald, who had this bike in Sun Valley, Idaho, Steve died in September of 71. He was one of 500 soldiers lost in the war. Steve introduced me to motorcycles, Sean says, and that's why it has so much meaning to me. The AJS company was a last-ditch company alive in the late 60s and early 70s, used what was originally a Star Maker motor from England and placed forward in the frame. The engine put out around 28 horsepower. The unusual thing is about it shifted on the right side, and the pattern was 1 up and 4 down. The interesting thing about one of the AJS models, or this AJS model, was that it was one of the first, even before Mako, to have forward-mounted shocks and a leading link axle up front. Sean had Tom McAllister help him out with this bike from Full Circle Racing, and they partnered with it on this deal. The stock airbox, fork tube, fenders, number plates, silencer cables, Kickstarter, decal sprockets, just about every nut and bolt were replaced with all NOS items. The wheels were broken down, bearings were replaced, the hubs were polished, spokes were replaced with stainless steel Buchanan units, and Tom at Full Circle put the whole thing together. They powdered the coat of the frame in a correct AJS gray, and what you see is the results right here from Sean McDonald. Sean, I want to thank you for sending this bike into us. It is probably one of the most sentimental bikes or sentimental pieces that anybody has ever sent into us. I really enjoyed the story. Thank you for sending it in. I have your address, and I'll be getting out some stickers from fastguystuff.com. Sean McDonald, thank you once again. Here's the problem. Here's where we take some questions that people send to us throughout the week. We do a little research, and we try and help them out along the way. Jordan, what's our first question for tonight? Mike Blank, I'll be installing a new crank and bearings and a rebuilt crank in my 1975 KX 400. Do you have any tips? Yes, I do. And we're going to slow down here just a little bit because I don't want to miss anything. And I want to make sure I explain some things to you in the proper order. Jordan? 75 KX 400 that I restored, but I want to get on past that. Okay. The first thing you want to do is, of course, get your bearings out and make sure you order the correct bearings, the right sizes, measure them, and make sure you get the right stuff. So when you go to put your bike back together, you know you're dealing with the right bearings to begin with. Next slide, Jordan. Make sure your cases are all cleaned out. Get a manual, get a service manual. Because as you see here, you see where all the gears are on one side of that case? In your service manual, it's going to tell you what side of your case you should leave the gears in when you take the bike apart. And it's very, very important that you do that. The reason being is you want to get them back into that side. Also, the way the crank goes back in to one half of the case is going to make a difference, because in some instances, and I'm not sure quite on your KX400 here, in some instances, you're going to want to press the bearing into the case, then slip the crank into the bearing. In other cases, you're going to have to put the bearing on the crank first. And in the next photo, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. If you look at the photo on top, you could see on the left side of that crank where that bearing isn't all the way on the crank journal. There are three ways bearings go on different pieces. There's a slip fit, which obviously it slips right on. There's an interference fit, which means you're going to need a little pressure, but not much. You'd probably use something like this arbor press right here to get it on, or a press fit. Now, I don't recall ever having to press fit a crank bearing into a set of cases or onto a crank. It doesn't really happen. But if you need to have an interference fit, you're going to need something like that arbor press there on the right, to where you could put just the right amount of pressure on it to get that crank bearing down even in your case where it has to go. What I was talking about a moment ago, to where that crank bearing is not fitting all the way down the journal on the crank at the top, that is an interference fit. What you're going to have to do is probably heat up that bearing a little bit. Avoid putting things in a freezer and then heating up the other part. It's not a good idea, for the simple reason that the steel is going to retain the heat. The other bearing is the bearing of the other part you have is going to be in the freezer. By the time you put them together, the heat is going to work against the part that you froze, and you might wind up getting stuck in the middle somewhere. So avoid that. Do it to where you're going to heat up one part and it's going to slip over. So you can heat up the inside of that bearing, and it should push right over with an interference fit over the end of that crank. Again, your manual is going to tell you the way things are. I'm kind of not guessing, but I'm trying to tell you from a couple of different viewpoints, depending on what bike you're working on, how you should approach that. So your arbor press would be real good in this situation to get that bearing pressed down into your case on an interference fit. If you got a little problem getting it in there, you could heat up the case a little bit. Don't heat up the bearing. If your crank seal is on the other side and you don't want to go in there with a torch, I get that. It's not a good idea. You can do it with a heat gun too. The heat gun is not going to make that case as hot as the engine when it runs. So if you want to heat up that aluminum case a little bit before you put it in the arbor press and put your bearing in there and get it pressed down, you can do that. Your service manual is going to tell you a lot about what's going on here. I'm giving you some advice, but my advice probably applies to a couple of different bikes. I hope I'm being pretty clear with this as we're going. What's the next slide, Jordan? That was it. I didn't mean to end so abruptly. Mike Blank, I hope that shed some light on it for you. If you have any further questions, drop me a line, send it to me in my inbox, and I'll answer some questions for you if I didn't make it clear. Thanks for the question, Mike. Jamie McCollum, what's the best way to clean up and repair rotted clutch cover water pump area of mid-80s CR250s Hondas? We've gotten this question probably at least 3 times over the past, we've done like 35 shows. Now, here's what I would recommend. Next slide, Jordan. Once that area gets rotted out, the problem is not only does it rot out in there, but in this picture, if you look closely, there's the inlet and the outlet for the water to get into that impeller area. Those areas rot out too. And those are not so easy to repair. The pipes are very thin. It's not something you can repair. Next slide, Jordan. You can, like in this picture where it's all rotted out and corroded on the left, you can use different products. One that's recommended is called lab metal. You can get in there, you can put it in, it's like JB Weld or epoxy, but it's much stronger. In fact, it's so strong and it has so much metal in it, they claim that you can powder coat it. That's how much metal it has in it. And it's ready to use right out of the can. It looks just like that. So you can try that. If you get it nice and smooth in there, or maybe you know a machinist that could get it in his mill when you're done, you can get that area cleaned up in there with one of those products. Still, you got to make sure the inlet and the outlet pipes are not rotted through. Otherwise, you're just going to be throwing good money after bad. Really, my suggestion would be, next slide, Jordan, would be to go out and get yourself a new cover. There are a few guys making replacement covers. They sell them on eBay. They're in the UK. They're not cheap. They're about $500. One I saw was closer to 600, but it's made of aluminum. It's a perfect fit, and it is the answer to the problem. You're never going to have that problem again. So if you're going to keep the bike, instead of going through that lab metal and machining and maybe something working for a short period of time or giving out on you at the most inopportune time on a day at a race or out for a ride, get yourself a new cover. That's really the best thing you can do. Yeah, it's a little expensive, but you know, it only hurts once. Pay the money and you can get it done. That's my advice for those rotted out covers on the Elsinores. Craig Smullen. I have difficulty jetting my 1977 Suzuki RM125. I've tried Sudco recommendations and others, and it always seems to be off. Craig, I've got a couple of pieces of advice for you here. Number one, I put up a jetting chart which shows you where in your range of jetting you might be having a problem. You might have a problem at the bottom to where you want to concentrate on a pilot jet. You might have a problem toward the top end where it might be your main jet. You need to take those steps to make sure that you go through them all in each area and work your way through that circuit, because that's exactly what it is. One jet working at a time, slightly overlapping, but they all work together. Now, if you're really having a problem with getting that bike jetted after you've done your research with Sudco, new carburetors, and you follow the instructions, I would probably say you have an air leak. I've discussed this with Harry Clem several times, and if you have an air leak, you're going to have to seal off your intake, seal off your exhaust, just showing you here on a top end in these two slides. But you're going to have your engine all together. You're going to have to cut off any air getting into the intake and getting out the exhaust. And you're going to put a pump on it like this, called a leak down test kit. They're available from Motion Pro. You're going to put it on your engine. And in that kit, it's going to tell you exactly how many pounds of pressure you should put in that engine to find out where your leak is. You're going to love this tool and you're going to hate this tool all at the same time, because it's going to tell you exactly what the problem is, but then you're going to have to go hunting. Now, it could just be in one of your crank seals. It could be your base gasket leaking. It could be your head gasket. It could be that you have a problem somewhere around the intake by your reed valve. It could be that you have a problem somewhere where your cases mate together. And if that's the problem, you're going to have to take that bike all the way apart. Once you discover where the leak is, you're going to have to get those things resurfaced, put a nice finish on them, and in order for that problem to be resolved and you to get your bike running properly without any leaks. Now, I'm going to share something with you here about how serious this air leak problem is, even on, well, it's probably not happening on bikes today. Years ago, in the 80s, I'm not going to tell you the manufacturer. I'm not going to tell you which line of bikes specifically. But for about 5 years, a manufacturer had problems with air leaks that they didn't even know about coming out of the factory. This went on for a while. A lot of those bikes went back to the dealers. A lot of those bikes were repaired at different races by a certain group of people that knew that existed. We're talking about hundreds of bikes with air leaks. It's not something people are real familiar with, but it's one of the biggest problems that guys have that they're not aware of when it comes to jetting a bike and them never being able to get it right. You want to check into that, Craig? Thanks for the question. In the What's It Worth segment, the 1981 YZ250. I discovered this bike on my other Facebook page, Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide. It sold for $3,800. Robert Fish built this bike, and he's been doing a great job of building some wonderful racers for some time now. Robert Fish, he calls himself Racer Fish. He's on Facebook as well. It was sold on 6/30 for $3,800. Jordan, if you slip through these pictures a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit more about it. What Robert Fish did here was he put a lot of new parts on his bike. anything that was worn out. The bike was not finished when he took these pictures, but he did have some really, really nice side covers that he did put on the bike. He had correct 43 millimeter fork legs put on it. They were ding free. He put those beautiful black rims on it. He replaced the spokes. He used Pro X sprockets, or Renthal sprockets rather, a Pro Taper chain. He did so many nice things to this bike, put a great DG silencer on it. The tires are fresh on it. All the fasteners, a lot of the fasteners were replaced. And Robert is even making some fasteners out of titanium and different types of steel. He hard anodizes them. He does some really, really great things. And I thought this bike was a smoking deal for $3,800 because it was completely rebuilt, looked very fresh, a bike you could take out, put your numbers on, go to the track. I mean, there's another great example, how we cleaned up the combustion chamber in that head, made it look like brand new. Robert's putting out some beautiful bikes up there in Washington, and he did a great job on this one. And for $3,800, I think there's a real lucky buyer out there having some fun on that bike right now. Robert, great job. I hope you didn't mind me putting it here on the show, Vintage Motocross Q&A. Trivia's back. That's right. Somebody's going to win a book tonight. It's Finding Number 49, a book that was generously given to us by Keith Geisner. You'll win not the bike, Jordan. We're not giving away bikes. We're giving away books. That's it. So the first one to call in with the correct answer to area code 925-234-8181 and can answer this question will win this book tonight. They don't pay me enough to ride that thing. Who said that and what bike was he referring to? It wasn't a motocrosser, but you guys are sharp. You're going to get this. They don't pay me enough to ride that thing. Who said that and what bike was he talking about? Call in right now to 925-234-8181. Susie standing by with the first caller with the correct answer, 925-234-8181. Let's get a winner, Susie. What do we got next, Jordan? The product spotlight. Preston Petty Products. We're, of course, an authorized dealer for Preston Petty, and I want to thank Preston, of course, and Paul Stannard every week for sending us in some really, really great products. You could either go to the Preston Petty website, order what you want from there, or you could order through me. This week's special from Preston Petty is, drumroll please, save $20 on a front and rear fender only in dark orange. Front and rear fender in dark orange plus a front number plate in yellow, $20 off. Generally $105.50. Get it now for $85.50. Inbox me for the code. I'll give it to you when you go to check out at Preston Petty. You can get $20 off of that nice little package right there. We're still waiting for Susie to come in with the trivia. And in the meantime, Jordan, we could move on. Oh, Vmxq. This is something, I love this. Vmxq has some great products, over 600 of them in their catalog alone. But one of the things they offer right here is a piston dimension chart. And for you guys that can cross-reference stuff, or you're looking for certain pistons that may go in a different bike, or you're doing rod kit changes or things like that, you're going to want to go over to Vmxq, check out the piston dimensions chart, and you'll be able to order from them the exact piston that you want. And I'll tell you, it's just incredible how many dimensions they have that go from the bottom of the piston up to the pin, up to the dome. It's a great way to cross-reference pistons if you want to put some of those Vmxq aftermarket pistons into a bike that you have. Susie, we have a winner.
I do. Hold on.
Hi, this is Joe. You're on the air. Who am I speaking to?
Glenn Gillespie.
Hey, Glenn. Who was it that said the words, they don't pay me enough to ride this thing, and what bike was he talking about?
Kenny Roberts, the Yamaha TZ750.
That is exactly correct. I knew somebody would get this. Hey, Glenn, I want to thank you so much for calling in. I'm going to put Susie back on the phone. She's going to.
I was there that night when you said it.
She's going to get your address, and we're going to get you out that book, Finding Number 49.
A lot of people.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And there's the picture, of course, of King Kenny Roberts. They don't pay me enough to ride that thing. No, I guess it would take a whole lot of money to get anybody to get on a 4-cylinder, 2-stroke flat track bike and go, 150 miles an hour, 100 through the turns on that bike way back when. Kenny, something special. And you know what, while I'm thinking about it, if you go on YouTube, you can put that in, Kenny's TZ750. You could see him riding that bike at Indianapolis again, just about 5 years ago. There's a great video of him and Valentino Rossi, and he takes a spin on that bike. You won't believe it. Great job on the trivia, Susie. I want to thank everybody who called in, and I'm real excited about having a winner for that. Jordan, what do we got next? Oh, we got a commercial break from Vmxq. Let's see what's going on there.
Classic and vintage dirt bikes are more than a hobby. It's not just about the ride. It's about the work that goes in. The work that keeps you connected to the ride. It's about bringing the bike back to life and doing it with your own hands. It's about the adrenaline and adventure. And when it comes to putting all the pieces together, only Vmxq knows the bikes and parts the way you do. Vmxq. Keep the ride going.
Great products, great people. Vmxq.com. Go and see them after the show. Just how I see it. This is a segment of the show where I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's on my mind, and we're going to get right to it right now. Supercross and hand sanitizer. You know I love watching Supercross. I don't think I've ever missed a race in over 11 years. And at least on 2 or 3 occasions, every season, I go to a Supercross live. The COVID-19 problem has been a big strain on a lot of things, especially on professional sports, and it continues to be so. However, the people at Monster Energy and Feld managed to figure out a way to bring us the last 7 races of the year. One of them, of course, will be following this show tonight. In the next few weeks, they will crown a champion, and I believe we're all grateful to Feld and Monster Energy for figuring out a way to bring that race to us from Salt Lake City so we could see what's going on in one of our favorite sports. I did, however, have a problem with the minimal amount of coverage that Marty and Nancy Smith received during their tribute on last Sunday's episode of the race. I mean, 27 seconds of coverage to honor a legend in motocross and his wife who were tragically killed on April 27th. It was just a feeble attempt to me to really honor their memory. Look, I'm fully aware of how television works. I know there's only so much time in a show, and you can only devote so much to one subject. But I'm not against hand sanitizer, but to go on for several minutes about hand sanitizer on the show, I don't know. I thought it would be much more, well, I thought it would have been much better spent. The time would have been better spent if they spent a little more time on Nancy and Marty Smith and did a little bit of a better tribute to them. So maybe in the future, there'll be a more fitting tribute in the works. I don't know, but that's just how I see it. What's next, Jordan? Announcements. Vintage Motocross Radio. The show's going really, really good on Sunday mornings. I've been doing it at 11 o'clock so as not to interfere with the Sunday races with Supercross. So I've been doing it at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Sunday mornings. Last week, my guest was Terry Good, and boy, we went over the regular hour I spend because he just had so much to talk about. I think Jordan's got some clips here from the Terry Good interview. We'll play them, and then I'll tell you about who my guest is going to be this week.
This was in 77.
Mm-hmm.
We're just standing in the kitchen there, and I look out the kitchen window, and there's a detached garage in the backyard. And there's this motorcycle leaning up against it. I look at it closer, and I go, God, that looks like a factory Yamaha. And so I asked him about it, and he says, yeah, that was Pierre Carsmaker's bike. And then he goes, and Bob Hanna rode it later. And I said to him, I go, do you mind if I go outside and look at it? And he goes, no, not at all. So I go outside, and I'm staring at this thing, and everything's titanium on it, special Profab frame, the magnesium triple clamps, titanium kickstart. You know, everything was a full-blown factory bike. I said to him, I go, would you ever consider selling it? And he goes, no, I got it from the president of Yamaha, Terry Tiernan.
Right.
Anyway, I asked him for his phone number, and then we went back home, and I just kept calling him, and he kept telling me no, and I just kept thinking about that bike, and I called him so many times, and he just kept saying no, and I almost forgot about it. It was just like, this isn't going to happen, get over it and move on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, one day he called me up, and he says, listen, I'll sell you the bike. I'm going to give you one shot at it, $650. Come on over here with the cash tonight, or don't ever call me again. and that was the start of this whole thing.
That was really a great interview with Terry Good. I enjoyed it. You can listen to it at any time at Vintage Motocross Radio, along with all the other interviews that we have there, from Arnie Beeman to Harry Clem. There's a bunch of them on there. I am really excited to announce that my guest this Sunday at 11 a.m. will be Steve Simons. Steve Simons, of course, from the Simons suspension fame. We will be talking about some of the forks that he made early on that were so amazing. Even some of the factory race bikes, factory works bikes had their forks replaced with some of the Simons forks. We'll also be talking about how he invented the upside down fork that helped Brad Lackey win the 1982 500cc World Championship. Steve is involved in so many different things, holds so many patents. He's a great guy. I'm really, really excited to be speaking with Steve Simons this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. I hope you can join me. Sadly, it was the week before last, we had learned that Dave Miller had lost his battle with cancer. Dave Miller was an incredible fabricator. He was a sculptor of metal. Some guys can weld, some guys can fabricate, some guys are machinists. Dave Miller was everything. He was one of the most amazing guys, got a career start early on back in the old FMF and DG days. And he started a little shop called Miller Mano down there in Southern California and really, really set the world on fire with that little company. He made pipe swing arms, had so many cool things that he offered, and went on as years continued to build custom bikes for people, incredible mini bikes, little mini flat trackers, so many different things that Dave Miller made that will never, ever be duplicated. For all of us that are in the restoration business, fabrication, paint, today, all of us moved up a rung because when Dave Miller died, you lost one from the top of the heap. My condolences to the Dave Miller family. You can still get shirts. You can still get shirts, Vmxq&A. You can get shirts from Metro Racing, or you can just inbox me, and for $46 plus shipping, I'll get you a shirt just like I wear on the show, like you see here in the picture. They come in black and white. They come in all different sizes, small, medium, large, extra large, and they come in short sleeve and long sleeve as well for just $46 or $43 if you want a short sleeve shirt. Inbox me or get a hold of Peg Miller at Metro Racing, and you can get a shirt just like that. By the way, I want to thank Amsoil for the shirt that I'm wearing tonight and for being a sponsor of Vintage Motocross Q&A. Marty Smith commemorative sticker packages are still available. Get a hold of my friend Rich Vasallo at USA1899@AOL.com. He, of course, got together with Wally Hackensmith, Rich Designs, and they put together this beautiful commemorative package. All the money goes to the Smith kids, and they're still selling them. So far, they sold, I think, like 150. They had to get another run going, and I think they just got another pack in. So Rich is ready, willing, and able to go with more Marty Smith commemorative stickers to help out the family in their time of need. Good on you, Rich Vasallo. Great job. FastGuyStuff.com supplying us with all the wonderful stickers that we give away every week to people who send in bikes for the Moto Showcase. Sean Gomes, thank you, and FastGuyStuff.com. Visit them after the show is over. They've got a variety of stickers from all different eras in motorcycle racing, and I bet you he's got something there for you. Sean Gomes, FastGuyStuff.com. Sponsorship opportunities are still available here. As you can see, Sean Gomes is doing it, Preston Petty's doing it, Vmxq and Amsoil. And this week, I had 2 inquiries about sponsorship opportunities. Now, the deals aren't sealed yet, but I am talking to 2 people, and I only have so much room behind me. So if you're interested in becoming a sponsor, if things are starting to loosen up for you a little bit on sales and things like that, get a hold of me through my inbox. I'll get you a proposal package. We'll be able to put something together. Also, and I don't have a slide for it here, but last week I had said to everyone that we were getting about 20,000, reaching about 20,000 people a month. And that was last week. I got the new stats in. For between May 5th and today, June 3rd, we have reached over 40,000 people. Over 40,000 people. We're up about 16 or 18% across the board, and we're reaching more and more people every week. I want to thank everyone for sharing and getting the word out there about Vintage Motocross Q&A. That's the end of the show. Time goes so fast when I'm having fun. I want to thank Jordan and everybody for helping put the show together this week, all of our sponsors, of course, and for all of you listening at home, I hope you enjoy the Supercross tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Please tune into my Sunday show, Vintage Motocross Radio, where my guest will be Steve Simons, and maybe Gino will be on the show. Gino! Oh, come on, boy. Come on, Gino. Good night, everybody.